Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar titled Content Management, a Secret Weapon. Based on the amazing response to this webinar, this is a very important topic to all of you and to a lot of professionals. So thank you for taking time and investing this hour with us and our industry leaders. Also, thank you for so many of your questions when you registered. We tried to group these questions into topics so we can address as many of them as possible. Please feel free to submit any questions as we go in the Questions tab on your control panel. Time permitting, we'll get to those during or at the end of the webinar. As a reminder for APMP members, this webinar applies toward your continuing education units for your certification. Slides and the video replay will be on our website by tomorrow. Also, we have a handout for you with a scorecard in the handout section of your navigation panel. I am Mallory Price, Marketing and Trading Coordinator here at Shipley, and happy to be joining all of you. Today we have three experts who are practitioners in business winning. Combined, they have over 50 years experience in sales, business development, capture, leadership, and proposal development. Amy McGeady joins us from Texas. Amy is the Senior Vice President of Strategic Solutions at Shipley. Amy is a current board member of APMP International, has held many proposal management positions, owned and managed her own consulting business, and led a nonprofit organization for many years. Lisa Puckrin is a senior consultant with Shipley and leads multiple content and proposal management projects for Shipley clients. She is an industry expert in content management and has helped establish and direct a global bid and proposal team that included proposal managers, content managers, graphic specialists, and others. And Brad Douglas is Executive Vice President of Shipley Global Services. Brad will moderate today's webinar. So our presentation today includes insights and ideas from many content management industry experts from various industries. So here is what our agenda looks like for today. We'll go over content management and define what it is. We'll talk about options, benefits, and the value of content management systems. We'll talk about garbage in, garbage out, and what that means for your content management. And we'll talk about the role of a content manager. So Brad, with that, I will pass the rest of the session to you.
Okay, Mallory, thank you. And thank you all for joining. We also have, thankfully, we have Kelson Forsgren with us as part of our panel, and Kelson has overseen several content management teams, been involved in end-to-end proposal development, and so I will be calling on Kelson periodically for his insight and comments as well as we go. So thank you all. Thank you all for taking a little time today. This obviously hit a nerve, this topic, because we've had tremendous response and a lot of questions. And so we're going to do our very best in this short time to address them. And so I'm going to start off and ask Amy. Amy, in this profession of ours, this proposal development profession, that so many of us are involved in day to day, we face common challenges, and that became obvious in the questions that were submitted. Will you kind of talk through some of these common challenges and just how you've seen those surface in your professional career?
Sure. I feel like no matter how many proposals we've worked on, we have faced some of these challenges. You know, sometimes it's that staring at a blank page that you're starting from scratch. Other times it's that you've received writing and it's really not great and you have a ton of rework. Sometimes we all face people that are missing deadlines, or the requirements are really vague, or we have questions that seem like they're asking the same thing over and over again, and we're wondering, how do we deal with the redundancies in this RFP? Other times, you know, we're facing our own writer's block. How do we get started? How do we keep going? We're dealing with content coming from multiple sources and multiple voices that we need to try to make sound like was written by one person. We're searching for answers that we can't seem to find, or it's time consuming. We have subject matter experts that we need to engage who are busy doing other things, or are the go-to people we're always asking for content from, and they're a little tired of hearing from us, or we just don't have enough resources. So I think at some time or another, we've all faced these challenges, often multiple at one time.
So, Amy, just quick follow-up. You and I, in talking about this webinar, as we were preparing, you mentioned specifically that second to last bullet there, the SME engagement, and how important it is that we engage SMEs and technical contributors in a way that makes it easy for them and it's helpful. And can you see where a content management approach of some sort would help in SME engagement?
Definitely. I think, one of the challenges in working with SMEs is when someone is good, we keep going back to them over and over again, or they might be the one or two people in your company that have a certain type of expertise. And so if we're using a content management approach, then we can capture some of the things they've shared with us and not go back to them as though they've never told us this information. And so we can be more respectful of their time, whether that's not needing to ask them to write a section in the first place, or at least letting them be more in the position of, can you review this to make sure it's still current? So I think that demonstrating that we respect their time, that we're trying to set them up for success, I think that makes it a lot easier to work with our SMEs. And then when we do need them to help us come up with new content, they're less reluctant to do so because they know we value their time and we're capturing what they tell us in a way that it can be reused again in the future.
Excellent, good. Okay, this was a big deal, obvious to a lot of people who registered for this webinar. So thanks for that. Let us just real quickly define what we mean here, because when many of us hear the term content management, or we hear of a content manager, many of us automatically default to thinking it's all about website content, and search engine optimization and keyword density and all of that stuff that goes with websites, social marketing, all of that. We're talking specifically on this webinar about proposal content management. It's a different beast. It's different than what we hear so often in business when we're typically talking about content management. So we're laser focusing in on proposal content. We all know what a proposal is. It's a sales document or briefing or artifact of some sort that is presenting a solution to a potential customer. We're trying to make a sale. Content. This can be words, graphics, images. There's a certain tone to content. All of the messages that might hopefully persuade or compel a customer to choose us and select our offer. Management, we know what that is. It's people, processes, systems that govern proposal content development and how that is implemented into a bid or proposal response. So we just want to make sure we're talking about proposal content and managing that effectively, as opposed to just general content management. So if any of you are looking for, well, give us a definition, give us a definition. What would Shipley suggest is the definition of proposal content management? Here it is. Development of high quality, customer focused, reusable proposal content that is structured and curated in a centralized library for ease of ongoing maintenance, improvement, and accessibility. So that kind of summarizes where we're at as far as the definition of proposal content management. Okay, there's an evolution that's taken place. Mallory, let me pause here for a moment. Has Lisa been able to join us? I know she was having some technical difficulties.
I haven't seen her join as a panelist just yet.
Okay. Well, let's walk through just real briefly. There's been an evolution, and Kelson has seen this because he's been working end-to-end proposals, including content management, for years. But you can see here where content management started. You know, there were simple version controls, there was file maintenance, hard drive storage, to where today it's much more sophisticated. Kelson, do you want to just comment on how you've seen briefly this evolve, this idea of how we manage our proposal content?
Sure. And I'm sure many of us on this webinar have been through this process of, initially having created something that we think is a great proposal that we submit to the customer, and it may have even won us some business. And so we want to make sure that we maybe reuse some of that again. And so we store it on our hard drive, or as we got a little more sophisticated, we had a shared drive that we would be able to put these things on. But it was basically, we would be starting with the entire proposal itself that we want to maybe take and maybe change a couple of things or whatever kind of going forward. So we had, simplistic version control on that. Sometimes people would take the same copy and make their different versions. So we'd have replicated versions across multiple laptops, things like that. And then we, putting them in one location, either in a server that everybody could access or whatever. It was still kind of simple that way, but we were grateful that we had that kind of access. As things have evolved into more of the content management, the proposal content management, where we have additional tools that have helped us to automate searching and exploring and researching for specific content that we're looking for. Starting first with the documents in full themselves, and secondarily now with a lot of tools that are available to actually being able to break things down into question and answer pairs or chunks of information that we can do either a word search for or even a question search for, and be able to find sometimes multiple options that we could pull from and use as the starting point for something we're developing. And it's going to continue to grow as the tools that we're seeing now with AI, things that are happening across the world are incorporated more into how we look for and search for and find accurate information within our companies. I think they'll continue to help improve the quality of the efforts that we make. Tying back to the subject matter expert discussion as well, for them to be able to access additional information that they can build on. So I think it's going to continue to grow that way as we see systems, third-party systems, be able to accelerate that access and allow us to maybe get some of the tedium out of developing proposals taken care of a little more easily.
Great, thank you. Yeah, quite a shift, and it's ongoing. It as you said, it's going to continue to evolve. We're going to talk about that here in a little bit. But one thing, if we're involved in content management, proposal content management, one thing we need to be aware of, and again, what prompted this short discussion here were some of the questions that came in when you all registered. There's a real difference between types of document management and content management, between technical documents, proposal documents, and then specific proposal section content. And you see the aspects. So for example, the purpose of a technical document is basically usually to inform or maybe to recommend, where the proposal we're trying to persuade and sell. In the specific section, when we're doing content management, we're generally answering a question, some type of specific requirement. Same with organization. We can't ignore section or content organization when we talk about content management. We have to be able to not just find the right information, we have to be able to organize it as instructed. It's a proposal document. We've got to follow the instruction. Same with the section content. It's got to be organized as the customer has asked us. The audience, usually a technical audience in a technical document. We've got varied audiences in proposal and section of proposals. Could be a financial buyer, could be a technical buyer, could be the leadership. And then the reader intent is different between a technical document, proposal document, and section. In the proposal document, we want to win the business. We want to be chosen. We want to be selected. We want to differentiate. In a section, are we answering the question? Are we answering the requirement? So it's important here that we just take a moment, and this is go back to Amy and the focus on our technical teams, our subject matter experts. We have to educate our organization, our teams, to make sure everyone understands the purpose of different types of documents. The purpose is different depending on. And so a proposal document and the section within that is very, very specific and very different from traditional technical documents. Okay, just we're not going to dwell on this, but we know a lot of you are probably thinking, wow, where is artificial intelligence taking us when it comes to content management, specifically proposal content management? Well, the answer is, unfortunately, nobody knows. Nobody can sit here today and tell us what impact ongoing development in artificial intelligence is going to have on proposal content management. But making the news, you've probably all heard about it, read about it, is the artificial intelligence and ChatGPT. And so here's just a couple of snippets from a very recent post that was put out there on a blog post. What is ChatGPT? Well, it's a large language model that can generate human-like text trained on a massive data set of written works from the internet. And I'm going to just kind of let you read these along with me here. They're trying to get to where the output might be similar to what a human would develop. Large language models have limited reliability, limited understanding, limited range, and hence need human supervision. I want you to double read that. As smart as artificial intelligence is, when it comes to content and content management, it needs human supervision still. All tools can be prone to bias. Let you just glance at that for a minute. Continued. Same blog post. The jobs that AI tools like ChatGPT could disrupt include, and then it lists there, repetitive routine tasks, easily automated data entry, process, simple customer service roles, certain kinds of content creation. Okay. The World Economic Forum projects, of course, it's just a projection, that certain jobs may be replaced, but there could be a whole larger creation of new emerging opportunities in this area. So just, you know, nobody can really take a position on this as it relates to proposal content management, but our wisdom says we all need to be watching this. We all need to stay informed. Now, that ChatGPT is not the only game in town. All right, just headlines today, published from the Associated Press. Google, they're not sitting on the sidelines watching this happen. They've got a technology called BARD. It seeks to combine the breadth of the world's knowledge with power, intelligence, and creativity of our large language models. I'll let you read along. BARD can be an outlet for creativity and a launch pad for curiosity, helping you to explain new discoveries. So I want you to think of this in the context of proposal content management and how important it is for the information we get from subject matter experts, from our technical teams, our engineering teams, and how important it's going to be that, yes, artificial intelligence may streamline that access to that, but we are still going to have to make this content usable, customer focused, persuasive, and that's going to be the bulk of what we're going to talk about the rest of this webinar going forward. Is Mallory talked about it on the agenda, that third point, garbage in, garbage out. We are in the business development, the business winning profession. Our job is to win business. Our job is to persuade our customers to select our solution. So I just wanted to talk about that, and we called it the elephant in the room because there's so much discussion going on and everyone's trying to guess and project, and there's worry and concern about jobs, and I think it's exciting. I don't think it's going to displace a whole lot of our type of work, but it's going to, like that one quote said, it's going to adjust it and maybe change it just a little bit. Amy, I'm going to pause. Do you have any thoughts or comments on this, just generally, artificial intelligence as it relates to proposal content management?
No, I mean, I think you're right that, yet to be seen how it's going to affect how we do content management and some of our jobs. I think you just have to be careful in knowing that AI can produce content that seems very authoritative, but could be wrong if we don't have the right input. On the other hand, I think those of us, who want to be proficient as this technology emerges, learning how to structure great questions, I think is a good skill. And we'll still need to continue using the skills we have in terms of tailoring content to specific customers and opportunities. So I think that's kind of all I know today. I'm eager with everyone else to continue learning more and seeing how this is going to affect how we work in the years to come.
Yeah, good. Okay, well, Lisa, I'm going to ask you the next little bit here to walk us through. There's actually been some studies by some development companies, platform companies that focus on proposal content management and other content management that we want to relate to you in case you haven't seen these. And these studies talk about some of the benefits of moving in the direction of focusing on content management as an actual approach or profession, and maybe some of the even risks and the dangers and things we need to be aware of if we're going down that path. So Lisa, if you wouldn't mind just walking us through why many organizations avoid and are a little nervous about focusing on content management, and then some of the benefits as well.
You bet, Brad. Yeah, I think, we all have these solutions in place that maybe are a little bit archaic. I remember one company a long time ago having, that I worked for, we had Q&A pairs in Excel. We had some documents on SharePoint. Unfortunately, there's still a lot of companies out there in that position. So it's easy to get into that comfort zone. Hey, it works for me, it's okay. But then all of a sudden, maybe you start supporting another department, or you start, your company grows and you're going global, and all of a sudden it becomes more complicated and you're cut out a bit. So it's really that evolution that Kelson was talking about before. The industry is evolving so fast, and the speed of business has really increased. So, really we can't do the basic tools anymore. We have to really embrace this future. But it's understandable. It's a lot of work. Sometimes it isn't a priority. Sometimes you're pounding on the door of your boss, begging for a system, but there's no money. It's totally understandable, some of these challenges. And it's a lot of work to prepare and move to a system, as we've experienced as well as we've supported clients. But the benefits far outweigh any of the inconvenience that it takes. So really, I'm a huge AI fan. I'm going to jump on that side of the camp since we've been talking about all the AI today. I love AI. I feel like it makes my job faster. And if you have a content management system and you have it set up the way you should, with architectures and tagging, it really can make your search results so much faster, and do it by itself is the ideal. That's where we're headed in the industry. I'm all for AI answering RFP questions for me and making me be able to focus on more strategic things. There's a huge move away from documents to Q&A pairs, and that's that concise content management strategy. Q&A pairs have become the power of proposals these days, and that is really the benefit of coming into a platform and managing it actively. It also helps you have less risk. I think it's easy to get complacent, you know, and just kind of feel like your content, okay, I don't need to look at it, but it's pretty good having an RFP management system remind you. You set it on certain cadences. It's telling you, hey, you got to review this, and then you find something, oh, hey, I should have updated this number. Let's get that updated. It really does help with risk. And then I really think the quality and the accuracy can be so much better. And like I said, really it's automating this busy work and allowing us to really focus on what is important, which is focusing on our messaging, our positioning, and helping us win more business. And Lupio's study also kind of backed up this. It's really saying, you know, you have the ability to have an improved system, and that's really about how you're storing content, how you're surfacing content, and finding it in as fast a way as possible. And getting away from those tedious tasks. Let it answer basic things like what's your federal ID and what's your company address and what's your basic things. Run it through automation and let it do all those simple things for you. Accuracy is a huge problem in the enterprise business world today. You look at thousands, many companies have thousands of Q&A pairs, thousands of records, and having to actively manage that and stay on top of that for accuracy and consistency is super important. And then I would say collaboration, really. We're all into the new age of messaging and that collaboration. It's really important to be able to effectively communicate, and I think everybody gets so many emails every day. It's great to work in platform with people and be more efficient. And really, at the end of the day, it should help you complete more proposals faster, which should increase your win business. So many benefits on all of them. And then the downside, of course, if you're not actively managing, you know, what might happen. I think our content does become stale. You know, it's easy to say, oh, it's good enough, but getting in, actively updating it, having those automated email reminders, making sure numbers are correct. It really, if we're not looking at these things and making sure we have oversight on our content, we're focusing on. I know a lot of content libraries get out of control quickly. You start having a bunch of people add Q&A pairs, and if you don't have active content management, you can have duplications, those redundancies. Everybody writes differently, different authors, different voices, and if you're not actively trying to unify that and bring that together, then it quickly becomes fragmented in your database or any kind of library you're using. And then, you know, being able to really focus on the benefits. If you're just kind of writing content on the fly, most people, interestingly enough, don't think about benefit or client-focused writing. And, you know, that requires an active eye, an active pass to make sure that all content is focused on those benefits. So there really is so many benefits, and we really need to be actively managing our content and making the use of technology to make it better.
Excellent. Thank you, Lisa. Lisa, would you mind walking through the rest of the options here?
Yeah, you bet. It's been fun to watch the emergence of all the platforms out there. Like we talked about, kind of the early days, you know, managing in Excel, managing in SharePoint. Many of you are probably still on some form of SharePoint or a OneDrive or something like that. But really, the evolution is towards these RFP management systems. And it's been so fun for us at Shipley to work with these platforms and represent clients in building out these solutions. Lupio, Rfpio recently acquired RFP360. You know, great solutions, Chorus Docs, On24, PandaDocs, Upland. you, Vivian. It's a race right now among all companies to help us do our jobs as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And so it's fun because they really are evolving so rapidly. The technology is, and they're all looking to how they can automate, how they can make our jobs quicker and faster. And there's still the need, of course, for things like collaboration in office products, collaborating across Teams, Slack, all of these solutions. And there's integrations with many of the RFP management platforms to be efficient in these. It's really about embracing technology to become more efficient at our jobs. I think that's really, we got to jump off that cliff. We got to embrace technology, and we have to set up technology correctly with the architecture and the tagging to make sure that we are as efficient as possible in our jobs.
Excellent. Thank you. And for those here with us today, Lisa speaks from experience. So she's had a real good cross section of experience in these platforms, and so thank you, Lisa, and appreciate that insight. Now there's one more study that we want to reference and provide complete credit to that Rfpio conducted a survey and an assessment. And Amy, would you mind walking through some of the findings of this assessment? And
Sure, I'd be happy to. So, Lisa's mentioned efficiency multiple times, because there can be a real ROI for investing both the time and the cost of purchasing a content management system and making it work effectively and efficiently, especially in resource-constrained environments. This can create real competitive advantage and allow us to generate more bids and proposals and truly be recognized as a professional role as content managers. So some of the things that Rfpio found is that employees are interrupted an average of 56 times a day. I bet many of you can really relate to that. 75% of American workers don't think they have access to the most efficiency boosting technology. People feel like their work overload is making them less productive by 68%. I mean, that's really significant. 86% of executives are saying that ineffective collaboration, ineffective communication is really a major cause of failure in their businesses. And 30% workers spend an average of 30% of their day just searching for information. So you can see that there really are major gains to be made by managing our content better in a way that people know how to access it, so they're not interrupting each other to find things that they could find on their own. They would have a sense of being able to be more productive, find information when they need it, and put it to use. And so you can just see so many benefits from making that investment in content management.
yeah, that's perfect, Amy. And we want to maybe step in here, and we're not at all suggesting that this has to be a major capital expense and a financial investment. We know that many on the webinar and many that join us on the webinars are from smaller firms and organizations and companies, and so we don't want to come across as though you've got to spend a whole lot of money on systems. In fact, Amy, if you don't mind walking through, if we don't have a massive opportunity to invest financially, what are some more, kind of the do-it-yourself ideas that might help someone? And this question was asked many, many times when many of you registered. Was, look, how can we get started? How can we start this kind of on our own? So would you walk us through just some guidelines on a possible approach?
Yeah, and that's a really great question, and I'm not surprised that we're seeing it so often. While having sophisticated systems and platforms are really nice, they're not really required. You know, there are some just basic guidelines that if you want to start where you are today to try to, you know, fine tune or begin a content management approach, there's some pretty straightforward steps that are pretty manageable that I think we all can do. You know, the first is really just figuring out, well, what is the plan? Creating a well-defined folder structure. So just kind of thinking some things through in advance. Think through how you're going to name your files and make sure that it's really clear and concise. I think the best thing you can do is try to make that as intuitive as you can. That if someone new joins your team tomorrow, they don't need to know your acronyms or specific terminology to find information, but it's organized in a way that's very clear and straightforward. You know, manage your data with using metadata, use keyword tagging so things are easy to find. One of the most important things is, you know, managing version control. You know, you do have to make sure that you're looking at the content regularly that you have, and you're archiving things that are no longer accurate or, you know, are outdated. You're reviewing content, you're updating things. You have a clear owner who has the authority to make changes and to let others know what those changes are. And then you know, have some careful tracking and accountability standards. So I think, you know, all of these things are pretty straightforward. It's mainly about, you know, deciding to kind of have some discipline and decide that you're going to make this a priority and just start working through kind of a project management system so that you can kind of take this DIY approach. You know, and some of the places that you can start if you're looking to figure out what your content is, you know, one of the best sources are your past proposals, you know, any specification documents that you have, white papers, service descriptions, you know, getting copies of people's resumes, your certs and reps. You might also want to go to specific proposal sections. You know, what is your transition approach? If that's a question you're getting asked about a lot, your configuration management, your quality systems, your key personnel, and probably some that are like a tailored description of that, your safety plan, information on your company background. So, you know, if you're looking to start now, maybe these are some good documents or sections that you could consider focusing on as you get started.
Boy, thank you, Amy. That's so right on, because we see so often we're just reinventing the wheel way too often, and it's really wasted energy and hard on people. It creates burnout. So yeah, thank you. This is a great place to start. You know, any organization likely has these items listed on the left. We have past proposals or grant applications that we've submitted. We've got some technical documents, and yeah, you're right. Start there, and then start refining that and compiling it into sections, like you said, that are so commonly submitted. Fantastic. All right. I'm going to pause here for a moment. The next section we want to talk about is this idea of garbage in, garbage out, because any approach to content management is only as good as what goes into the system and the approach. Mallory, I wanted to just pause and see if there were any questions that you felt we ought to address at this point that maybe had come in.
We did just get one talking about the timeline. What do you propose is a good timeline for archiving language? You know, is it annually? Is it every 2 years? Lisa, I might pose that question to you. What do you think is a good timeline? Does it depend? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, Mallory, it's the type of content. So I think, you know, for the most part, corporate information, you know, general messaging, are really more like an annual. You're putting those on annual review cycles. Depends how, you know, product releases, marketing updates on positioning, maybe those are coming out annually, biannually. I think where you really get into an aggressive need is with product details. I know we supported a client at Shipley that was releasing new product details every quarter. So staying on very aggressive product updates when needed in large enterprise organizations. So yeah, definitely, I think you're a little safer with corporate, but as you get into that product specific, or even as you learn more about your competitors, maybe the feedback coming back from the sales team, and you hear that intelligence, that competitive intelligence, updating and adjusting your strategy on your content is so key, and as frequently as you possibly can.
Great. Any other questions at this point, Mallory?
We have a lot of AI questions, so I know we answered a lot of those when it came around. But Brad, we may have already touched on this a little bit, but I wondered if you have any more thoughts. So the question is, in the event that AI does begin leading the creation of proposals, do you think the government will respond in any way and change their RFP expectations? Will there be more oral proposals and less written materials? What are your thoughts or your opinions?
Yeah, boy, that's $1 million question. I will speculate and give my 2 bits worth. If you read some of the material you're reading, that already they're coming out with technology that allows the reader, the receiver of the information, to discern whether or not that was created by artificial intelligence or whether that was generated in some other way. So there might be some built-in constraints that limit what we can use as far as artificial intelligence placed into a proposal response. If the government says, we do not allow any artificial intelligence content, I mean, okay, then what are we gonna do? So that's my comment there, that we're gonna have to really keep an eye on it. As far as the government side, that's a great question. Are they gonna start leveraging or continue to leverage, really, it's already started, artificial intelligence in putting together their solicitation documents? Why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they take the exact same advantage as we've already talked about here and shorten the RFP development cycle? And so absolutely, I see that both the government side or the customer side and the proposing side are both going to have to keep a close eye on this, what's allowed, what's not allowed. And that was a great bridge question, Mallory, because what we're going to talk about now is this whole idea of, we've got to be really careful. Whatever we are still submitting in our proposals, it has to be laser focused on answering the mail. It has to be, well, let's just talk what it is. Garbage in, garbage out. No content management system is going to compensate for poor proposal content. It has to be current, accurate, clear, concise, and compelling. So when we talk about this, we've always heard it, right? We've heard this for years, garbage in, garbage out. If in any one of those systems we've talked about or databases we've talked about, we're putting outdated, inaccurate, redundant information, then that's the risk. We're going to be kicked out. We're not going to score well. We're going to be giving unsupported information to the customer. It's going to be hard to read and evaluate. So we've got to be very, very careful here. And think the opposite. The quality we put into the content development is going to reflect ultimately in winning more work. So Amy, this is something that you've talked about many times with many client organizations, with professional groups. The idea of what makes for really good proposal content. Remember the topic of this webinar, proposal content management. So let's make sure we understand what is good proposal content. And we've talked about kind of how to manage it. There's systems out there, there's guidelines out there, there's approaches. let's talk about the content itself. So Amy, would you take the next little while and walk us through what this means in these areas?
Sure. Good content, whether it's coming from your content management system, whether you're starting it from scratch today, I mean, you have to be clear, concise, correct, compelling. We're trying to be as responsive as we can. As you said in the very beginning, we're trying to persuade buyers to select us. And the easiest way to do that is to make our case in a way that we know is easy to understand, it's convincing, and kind of taking a little bit of a less is more approach. If we can say something in 100 words that's really clearly, I'm a big believer that that's worth 1,000 words that are kind of confusing. So I think that rule applies, whether you're starting from scratch or whether we're talking about managed content. And I think making something clear, we can't state that enough. Thinking through, like, choosing the right words and headings, trying not to use a lot of jargon or words that are kind of distancing because they're not straightforward. They kind of make your brain shut off when you read them. So choosing those right words and headings, putting the most important points first, using emphasis techniques. Now, you don't want to overdo this, but doing things like, bold, using italics, using other things that call attention to your main points, and then using the appropriate tone. You know your industry better than we do. Is that tone, being very technical? Is it kind of more warm and colloquial? And just putting together, making sure the content that you have is appropriate to your audience. And there's just been a lot of great studies on readability. So, we always are preaching to make sure that we're writing for our intended audience and to our intended audience. And there's great studies that show, that our people will read more and comprehend more when our content is less complex. So again, just being straightforward, clear, concise. The statistic that readership increases, by more than 40% when complexity is reduced we've got 40 to 60%, but when complexity is reduced by 3 grade levels. And there's all kinds of online free tools you can use to, see the kind of the grade level of your content.
Thanks, Amy. This next aspect of good content is being concise, and we provide some guidelines here, and that's all these are, guidelines. But take a look at some of your past work. I challenge everyone here to take a look at some of your past submissions, whether it's a grant application, a proposal, a tender. How is our paragraph length? I mean, are they paragraphs 20, 30 lines long, sentences? Do we have run-on sentences beyond 20 words-ish? Are we choosing the right words? Amy mentioned jargon. So just being concise is really a big deal. And here's kind of a silly example, but let's say that I wrote this in a proposal or an email to you. Why don't you just look what's on the screen for a minute? And if you want, type into the questions box in your webinar panel. What am I trying to tell you here with this statement? I utilized a tether and harness system to ambulate a quadrupedal canine to an open air environment. Let you write in some. Is that the best way to say this? Maybe if I'm speaking to a certain technical type. But maybe we could just, I used a leash to walk my dog outside. So just being clear and concise is really, really making sure that that our proposal content management is a secret weapon. It's a secret weapon to the extent that we make it good. and that it's high quality and easy to score, easy to evaluate. That's what makes content management a secret weapon, is the quality of what we're putting out. Okay, Amy mentioned a study, and here's another one. A message that's 9 paragraphs long loses 30% of readers by the end of the 5th paragraph. Yikes. Okay. Maybe we ought to pay attention and go back and look at some of our reuse content that we've loaded into our whatever system we're using that we call good, that we think is good, and is it marrying up with these 4 items that we're talking about: clear, concise, and correct, and compelling. All right, Lisa, how important is it that the content be correct?
Yeah, we all don't ever want to get called out by an evaluator or have to go back to a client and say something's wrong. And to be honest, you have to think about what brand and what messaging you're saying to the client. If you have grammar, punctuation, spelling errors, you want to make sure that they understand that who you are as a company, that you show respect for yourself and others by validating claims. You want to make sure that you're using all the technology you can to go faster, because we all know we're blitzing to the very last second on Rfpios, unfortunately. And then, the human eye about understanding. I find it so interesting that someone can write something and then someone else read it and no idea what's going on, or they totally take it a different way. I think this is a common thing that happens in our environment, and it's really about making sure people understand what we're trying to say. So if you have time to have multiple eyes as reviewers, have them see, do they all understand? Do they all get that same message? Because that's the first step before you get into persuasion.
Excellent. Thank you. Good. And then the last area that Amy mentioned was being compelling. Compelling means, are we focused on the customer? This is where there's potentially a little bit of a conflict, potentially, with artificial intelligence responses and what the evaluator, the reader, wants to see or read or understand or score. Is it laser focused on them, their priorities, their needs, and their issues? Or are they going to perceive it as just boilerplate, cut and paste, artificial intelligence? So we've got to be very careful going forward and make sure our content is compelling before we try to manage it. Garbage in, garbage out. So is it strength and discriminator focused, our content? Is it persuasive? Is there a clear value proposition? Not just a technical narrative, but a value proposition. What matters to them? And then those of you who have been on previous webinars or maybe in some of the Shipley training, you know that this is something that we focus on a lot, and that is compelling content, as I mentioned, is laser focused on the customer. And these are like 10 criteria you could look at and use as kind of a gauge about your content, your proposal content. Are you really focused on the benefits to the customer instead of the features? Here, item number 6. Item number 7, have we validated all of our claims that we've made in our proposals? Did we really follow the instructions for organizing our section, our volume? Is the value proposition clear? So here's a really good checklist of, is our content that goes into any management system, whatever it happens to be, is it compelling? And compelling means customer focused. And Kelson, would you just maybe talk about how important content's great and important, but so is organization of how we actually put it on the page, right?
Well, certainly, yeah. So if we've cleaned up the garbage going in and have these compelling responses put into our content management system, or however we're storing that, we can't just pull them out willy-nilly and stick them in a document and think that's going to fly. We still have instructions we need to follow, as Brad's talked about. but there are some great things that can help us in achieving those goals. So we can make sure we're following the order the customers asked us to do things in. We want to keep our setups short. That means that as you know, the introduction into a response section, we don't want to have that be too flowery or anything like that, but keep the connection of the reader to the content and the messaging that we're providing. We typically do that with making sure similar ideas are grouped together, using headings to be able to help make sure the readers understand where we're going with the messaging. So as we build out the structure of the summary and introduction at the beginning, addressing the body of the content with the details that need to be responded to and answered, and then making sure that we reiterate to the customer the things that we were wanting to point out to them as being the most important. If we understand what the customer needs, then we're able to highlight those things and remind them that will help improve the scoring process. So having things be well organized in our responses as we're putting content together, we need to remember that it continues through this process of how we structure the responses going out.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, we're about up on the hour, but Lisa, I'm going to ask you, and I'll ask you to do it kind of quick, but there's this emerging role, and some of you are probably seeing it in your organizations, and again, it depends on the size of your organization, but this role of proposal content manager is emerging. We at Shipley, we're seeing more and more need, demand for individuals, professionals that can help manage content and make the whole bid and proposal process more efficient and more effective. And so, Lisa, you've done a lot of hiring and training and onboarding content managers. Would you just walk us through, just real quick, bullet point almost, what is a content manager role?
Yeah, it's such an essential role and becoming more needed every day with the explosion of information that most companies are experiencing. So when you look at this, when you start looking at everything they do, you realize how much you need them. You know, you need them to organize your content. You need to figure out what's your architecture. And architecture is like this, think of it as like a vertical structure, like a vertical file structure. What should that be? How's that best organized? Then they need to look at tagging to surface information quickly. That's like a horizontal, usually tagging is horizontally organized across multiple content groups. Then you're always needing to add, it's the saddest thing in the world to me when someone writes great content and it somehow doesn't make it into reusable. It just makes us so much more inefficient when we're not using everything we have. So you need those dedicated content managers to add content, and the easiest way is to use an Rfpio management system where you're literally doing a click of a button to add it to your library. Long manual processes are just killing our time efficiency for that. And then, you know, reviewing, like we talked about, you have to set those review cycles and know what it is those frequencies should be, and you need to make sure you have the resources to carry those out, otherwise you put yourself at risk. Same with updating. You know, you're very much looking at you know, what needs updated and what frequency, and what are the key areas in your business. And then my favorite is improving. I really feel like this gets shortchanged too much. How many times do we really focus on making it better, clarifying it, shortening it, making sure it's client focused, deduping content to keep our libraries cleaner and surface the better content. These are just such essential roles. If you're trying to advocate, and the last one, I'm sorry, is archiving. What should you get out of there? What needs to be archived? Because if you have old stuff sitting around, it makes your searching less efficient. So if you're trying to advocate and get for a role, take a screenshot of this, because when you consider everything that needs to be done, some of you proposal managers are out there trying to manage your own, do it all yourself. Try to advocate for a role like this. You can tell how needed it is, and we've seen, you know, this become absolutely essential on a proposal team.
Excellent, thank you. Yes, it is. It is becoming a key role. So where do we start? Just in summary, if you're thinking about what's my path forward, here's just some ideas, and it's quite a list. And I apologize that it's so lengthy, but you know, it starts there at the top. You got to get some leadership buy-in. You got to find a champion. We've talked about most of these things. A plan. What kind of investment are we looking at? We need to test things before we do allocate a bunch of funds and resources to it. How are we going to adopt this, maintain it, manage it long term? So again, where do we start? That was a lot of your questions. Just keep these bullet points in mind. So just in summary today, establish some kind of plan, whether it's a do-it-yourself, just have a plan on how you're going to manage content, make it better, keep it current, make it compelling. Do we have a business case for upgrading and engaging in some kind of a third-party system or a robust system? Define and assign roles. If we don't assign clear roles, we're going to be scrambling and reinventing the wheel again. Best practices for quality content. Amy talked about the quality, being clear, concise, managing the process, keep refining it. You know, it's not static. It's not one and done. It's evergreen. You know, it's agile. We've got to treat this the same way we treat our proposal development process and be flexible and nimble and make it scalable. So we invite you, thank you all, especially Amy, Lisa, Kelson, Mallory, thank you, and all of you who joined us. This is our future webinars. You can see any of our webinars on our YouTube channel or right off of our website. So, you know, don't be afraid to go to YouTube, Shipley Webinars, and you can see any of our past ones there. Watch out for the advertisements. And then we post all of these on our website as well under the resource tab. So thank you all. This is a hot topic. It was fun to think about and investigate and explore. And we're up against our hour, so we tried to answer your questions in the body of the webinar. This is our contact information. Feel free to reach out to any of us. And again, thank you so much, and we'll post this. There is a handout. We'll leave this up for a little while. The handout is really a role description, a notional draft description of what a content manager might do as far as responsibilities and their role. So you're welcome to download that and have that. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day and rest of your week. And again, thank you for your time.